on time, and it's a lovely day, and you know it'd be nice to get out there again, but welcome to the meeting. I have two apologies by text to me, and I'd have to say please don't rely on me to pass on your apologies because I don't always have my phone on me, but today we do have apologies for lateness from Councillors Laurie and Fulton, because I have a mover to accept those apologies. Councillor McGurk, Councillor Courtney, I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against and carried. Thank you. The order of business is as set out, apart from the fact that I need to remind you that we do have live streaming, so please put your microphones on. I have watched these meetings from home at breakfast from time to time in the committees I'm not on, and if you don't have your microphones on, I don't actually hear you, so there's a wee tip for those that want to be heard. You'll need to put your microphone on. No public forums today, and there's one late item which is a public excluded item, and we'll need to resolve that is going ahead. So I will read the recommendation that the committee considers a public excluded item regarding community investment funding panel membership at this meeting as a major item not on the agenda pursuant to section 46A(7)(a) of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987 to enable a timely decision to be made, and it's recommended that this item is considered at the end of the public excluded agenda, and there's no other change to items, so I'll need a mover to. You've all seen the paper, and I will give you time to read it because I haven't had time to read it either, apart from on my phone, and it's a bit small. So we'll give you time to read that before we enter into the business of it. So have we got a question?
Can I ask why it came to us as a late item?
Yes, you can. And Mr. Ward will answer that question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So while preparing for the Community Investment Panel meeting, which is due to allocate funding for the next year, it became apparent that the membership of the panel had not been confirmed beyond the end of June of this year. The understanding was that it would be aligned with the triennium, but that hasn't formally been resolved by this committee.
Questions? Councillor Courtney.
Madam Chair, can I ask the officer how often do they meet, the panel?
So through the chair, the panel meets approximately 4 or 5 times a year. A couple of times are decision-making meetings in relation to allocation of funding, but there is some preparatory work that is done through the year, and also some review of the priorities during the year as well. So on average 4 or 5 times.
Do they follow up on grants they give? Do they sort of, is this a supervisory? Is there an overview by officers or by the panel?
So through the chair, yes, that's an officer function.
Thank you. Is everybody clear why we're doing this? Councillor Rutledge.
Why is there no council representative on that panel? It seems like we're dishing out a lot of money without.
You would not want to be, because we all used to do it, but I'll let Mr. Ward explain.
So can I suggest that we're getting into matters of relevance that we can discuss within at the time the item.
Okay, so I now need a mover to consider that
I'll move
as a late item. Thank you, Councillor Rutledge, seconded by Councillor Courtney. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. We'll deal with that at the time. Thank you. Interests register. I need to remind you to alert me if there are any items. I don't know of any ahead of the meeting, but if there are any and you realise that you have a conflict, please let me know at the time. Then it's no public forum. So we move to the confirmation of minutes, which are pages 8 to 14. I'm sure you've had time to read all that. So I'm looking for and it's just a confirmation that they are correct record. So if someone would like to move that they are a correct record. Thank you, Councillor McGurk, seconded by Councillor Rutland. Thank you. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Status report, pages 15 to 18. And I will take these page by page. So the first one is the approval of the Waka Landing site concept, which seems to be ongoing for quite some time, but there is a explanation there. Page 17 is the funding of the reallocation of the youth activities, and that's now complete. Do you have a question on that, Councillor Walker?
The previous one, sorry, I
Yes.
was a bit slow.
Page 16.
In Wellington the other day I had a look at a fiberglass walker. I'd just like to be sure that the landing area is in fact of the right size for it. If it is the same, could someone just check on that? It would be a bit embarrassing to find that the walker that's being spoken of may not fit.
Mr. Ward's going to reply.
So through the chair, the item in the status report refers to an artwork at the location of the Waka landing site that already exists at the bottom of the Mai Tai walkway there. But I'm happy to follow up on Councillor Walker's question with the relevant staff.
Councillor Barker?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I was reading this and wondering, is there a cap on the expenditure for this?
Which item are you referring to?
Page 16.
Page 16. I'll get Shanine Raggett to come to the table.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your question, Councillor Barker. Through the chair, there is an annual allocation of $75,000 in the council budget for public art. This project in particular, at the time it went out to call for expressions of interest, the budget was, I think, $75,000. So the artist is currently working on the stage one, which is where they're developing the concept, and from there we will hear back what the final costings will be and proceed from there.
Thank you. And what oversight will your committee have of that in this process?
Mr. Ward?
So decisions on the artwork is delegated down to the art selection panel, and we report back to the Community Services Committee once decisions have been made.
I hope that there will be some conservative thoughts about this.
It's already done, isn't it? It's already approved. So there's no, I don't think there's, what do you mean, Mr. Barker? Councillor Barker?
I'm really saying that I hope that the panel does employ a frugal mind on it.
Well, selection of the work and the budget's been set, so we're already, this was done in July last year.
Just because the money's there doesn't mean it has to be spent.
Correct.
Madam Chair,
Councillor
for you to Officer Raggett, the positioning of the artwork, can you indicate where that is going to be exactly positioned?
Through the chair, the artwork is on, how can I explain? So if you're walking on the new Mai Tai walkway, there's the small bridge across Saltwater Creek, and the area to the right of that is what we call the Waka landing site. So just to the left of the pontoon, there's it's sort of a headland. There's a raised area with rocks in a cage type thing. So it would be on the point there. So yeah. Off the top of my head, I believe it's about 5 meters tall, 5 to 6 meters tall. So yes, quite visible.
Thank you. So we'll move on to page 17, which is the funding reallocation for the youth activities, which is actually complete. No questions on that. And page 18, which is the youth strategy report, which is today. We're dealing with that. No questions on that. Right, can I have a mover that we receive that report? Thank you, Councillor Rutledge, seconded by Councillor Courtney. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Now we're on to the chairperson's report, which I gave a written report this time. The only addition I have is why you might be wondering why we're all wearing this, and I've got hair that matches, because it's going to come up to Age Concern are actually running a morning tea on the 14th of June. It's World Elder Abuse Awareness Week in the middle week of June, and they've gone for purple. So if you want to wear purple clothes and go on out there and have morning tea with them, that they may give you some more information. I have some flyers. I have some more badges. I've given you those of you that were here before, I've given you badges, I've got more here. So I just wanted to raise the awareness, an important issue, very important issue, which I'm sure you'll be see more of in the next couple of weeks. So unless there's any questions on my report, which there don't seem to be, I think it was fairly comprehensive. Could possibly just do a quick rerun on the event that Victory Boxing had. It went very well. It was quite a moving experience. There were several councillors did attend, were able to go to that. And I think it's just started a conversation which I'm very pleased about. So I'm happy with that. And we will be working more on that area of mental health as we move on. I think it's an important thing, covers many aspects of life and across the board really, all ages. So if somebody would like to move the receipt of my report. Thank you. Councillor McGurk, Councillor Courtney, all those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Now moving on to item 8, which is pages 21 to 50. The Nelson Arts Festival Transition Group. Who's going to be... we've got Mrs. Raggett again. Thank you. Right, any questions on this? We've got Mrs. Raggett here. We have worked over this many, many times, and I have asked if there were any questions previously to ask those ahead of time. Councillor Rutledge has been working further with the staff to refine some things. He spent some time, I thank you for that. And this is really just prepared, ready to go out for the next round of working with the community. So Councillor Courtney has a question.
Through you, Madam Chair. Raggett, Officer Raggett. Perhaps one day. Lovely. Would you prefer that title, would you? Officer Raggett.
Right, well let Mrs. Raggett answer the question directly, thank you. I think we've had enough of the other.
I'm not sure whether this is in your domain, but I just wonder why we really need to go out to public consultation again, because it's here before us, and you see the Nelson Arts Festival Transition Group have communicated and had contact with a wide cross-section of the community, and to get on to the the long-term plan, 2015 I think through 2025, you've had wide public consultation there, so why do we really need to do it again?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Courtney. Through the Chair, so you're correct that we have previously consulted on establishing an external governance structure for the Nelson Arts Festival, and we've considered that in this report. So the bit where we're stuck is around the Local Government Act and the requirement to consult to establish a CCO. So with the long-term plan consultation, we didn't specifically state that we wanted to establish a CCO. It said that we would like to look at options for an external governance structure. So advice we received was that that wasn't specific enough to establishing a CCO. So that's why the report is here in that, with that recommendation today.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Rutledge.
Could you outline the nature of that consultation? Are we allowed to do a bit of a lean version, or?
Through the Chair, so what we would propose would be a relatively simple process, an article in our Nelson, probably a newsletter to the Arts Festival through the e-news, and that way interested parties could put their views forward, and would just have it open for a certain period of weeks where people can feed back. So I would imagine it would take 2 to 3 months to complete the process.
Sorry, and a follow-up if I could then. That timing, does that make it difficult to have the structure up and running by next year, or is that, would we still be on track for for council not being the one who's running it by 2018?
Through the chair, so the transition would take a while to completely transfer to an external structure regardless. So as soon as we have council approval that we wish to proceed with whatever structure it is that's chosen, then the steps can be taken to go with that. I would imagine that it would, 2018 you asked, it wouldn't be possible even at this point to have it completely run by an external structure by 2018. So the idea is that it would transition over a period of time. So I don't think that having to go through the consultation would necessarily make a huge difference in terms of timing, to answer your question.
That raises one more question then. Why does it take so long to transition? Can you outline those steps and why such a slow process is necessary?
Through the chair, so the transition would include firstly formally establishing a charitable trust and having to go through the process of forming a board to run that trust. Then there's all the functional aspects of the festival to be considered and how that transfers out. So if you compare it to how the Christchurch City Council have transitioned their Christchurch Buskers Festival to an external trust, they took a staged approach where the operations were transitioned out over a period of time. It would be quite challenging to one day it be a council operated event and then the next day go to an external trust. So for example, you might begin with transferring operations around functions such as marketing or a website or those types of things, so we would come up with a timeline of how that would transition out.
Councillor Rutledge, do you have any further questions? You look like you might. I'm happy for you to carry on, or I can come back to you if the discussion leads further. Okay, thank you. Councillor Barker.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm referring to item 4.12 in the finances. Can I please get a bit of a outline of the procedures relative to this fairly precise figure of $387,316 for ticket sales funding and other income, and who will be actually doing the ticketing, and what oversight and controls will we have on the insurance that the ticket sales and other funding money raised will actually be held by council?
So through the chair, I think there's two different questions in there. One relates to if we were to go to an external governance structure, how would we manage the oversight of that structure? And depending on the model chosen, if it was through a CCO, it would be through the CCO processes, statement of intent, annual reports, and control over appointment of trustees. If it went to an external trust organisation, then we would be looking to secure council's interest through contractual arrangements. At the moment, we manage our contracts internally and have oversight of those processes.
Councillor McGurk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions. I'm just thinking about the council's significant engagement policy and whether there any obligation to us to either use the SCP process, the special consultative process in Section 83, or have officers turned their mind to the significance and engagement policy and whether or not we need to use the special engagement policy or the level of consultation that is required?
Through the chair, yes, so we looked at the Local Government Act requirements around that, and an SCP is not required for this process. So to establish a CCO, I believe it's Section 82, but don't quote me on that. We have to consult under that, which is sets out the guidelines, but it's not an SCP.
Any further questions? Madam Mayor.
Through you, Madam Chair. Shanine, I just want to tease out this question about consultational feedback and the relevant sections of the Act. I mean, the Act doesn't define, it's not requiring us to undertake a special consultative process to do this, but it is talking about all the appropriate provisions around consultation. Now, I was looking at the report and I can see that it talks about consultation, but when I look at the recommendation, it talks about feedback. And I view those words quite differently, in the sense of normally when we talk about consultation, we may expect, or we have tended to expect, that we might see some submissions and people might be able to present them. So what was intended here in terms of the process? I'm just interested in whether we're going to take written feedback, whether we're going to give people the opportunity to come and talk to the committee. What was the intention?
Through the chair, the intention would be to have a submission process with written feedback.
With no hearing process, so there was no intention to have a hearing process.
Mr. Ward is
So, through the chair, I think the Local Government Act specifically talks about consultation in the section referring to the establishment of a CCO. That is not the same term. Excuse me. That's not the same as running an SCP process. And my understanding is that we would. The use of feedback in the report is deliberate in terms of it not being a full formal process requiring formal written submissions and formal hearings. It was more around, we've already had that process, to go back to Councillor McGurk's question, through the previous long-term plan. So we have consulted on the putting the Arts Festival out to an external entity. This really is a bit of finessing, if you like, in terms of a specific option that is open to us, and that's around establishing a CCO. So I would expect we would put some information out to the community and hear what they say in a relatively non-formal way, and that feedback will inform Council's future decision on the structure it chooses.
Thank you. I'll just assume the officers have turned their mind to the significance engagement policy and bringing this recommendation to us to make sure that we're following a process that would be consistent with the establishment of a CCO. It's not so much the content, through you, Madam Chair, that it's not so much the subject matter of the Arts Festival, or it's the subject matter of establishing a CCO that's I'm turning my mind to. Thank you.
Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, through the chair. When we last talked about this, and I can't remember if it was in a workshop or a community services meeting, there was some discussion about whether the CCO would have a role in other festivals like the Summer Festival or other activities, and possibly promotion of some of our facilities. Is that still an option?
Through the chair, it's not relevant to the matter on the table today, but I think that it could be a potential in the future. The name of the trust that's proposed would be the Nelson Festivals Trust, which means that it's not exclusive to one particular festival.
Okay, because I guess I just thought that if we're going out for consultation, it should perhaps be part of that it's broader than just the Arts Festival. Or is that, can the CCO be set up and then its role change once it's set up?
So through the chair, the council's been fairly clear to date that the only matter under consideration is the Arts Festival. It's an entity. So if there was some desire to put out other festivals and other activities, I think you would have a separate process that you would need to go through for that, and separate decisions made.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Rutledge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The timeline that we've discussed, it seems that there are a series of steps, let's say step 1 to 6 to get this out the door. And the way it's been described is that you do one and then you do the next, and then so it's quite linear. Could we not be running all of those things in parallel? So you're assembling your board while you're applying for your charity status, and et cetera, et cetera. So once that's ticked off, you're ready to go.
Through the chair, sorry. Yes, you're correct. So that's the idea, but to be able to create a realistic transition plan, we need to put it down on in a sort of timeline, and it definitely would. I would imagine it would definitely make sense to have some things occurring concurrently.
And lastly, for me, do you expect there'll be additional cost that we need to provide for if we're running both the transition, the group and the process and the council, and it's all going on at the same time? Are we going to be spending a bit of extra money through this period?
Through the chair, so council has already budgeted an amount for setting up of the structure, so I don't anticipate there would be any extra costs over the time.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you again, Madam Chairman. I'm just referring back to the consultation and the Act requirements. Is it the intention to target the consultation, or is it going to be a blanket coverage of the whole community, giving the opportunity to provide feedback?
Through the chair, it would be a blanket opportunity for the community to provide feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one query about the concurrency of sort of forming up a board before you've decided you're going to do that method, and I'm just wondering why we would do that.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
It's just relating to Councillor Rutledge's question about running things concurrently. I mean, if you haven't decided you're going to do a CCO, why would you at the same time look at forming a board?
Through the chair, I think it would be you'd formally move to establish a CCO and then subsequently follow the process to appoint a board.
Yes,
Councillor
sorry,
Rutledge.
my question, just for clarity, was once you've made that decision and you've got steps like forming a trust,
that's fine.
applying,
Thank
all that
you.
sort of thing,
Thank you.
can you just run all of those in parallel?
Thank you. That's helpful to me. I think we've had a range of questions. I hope everyone is comfortable with that. So I'm now going to be looking for a mover to the recommendation. Councillor McGurk, a seconder. Councillor Laurie, any debate? No debate? Well, I'll put it then. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to number 9, pages 51 to 54, the Capital Expenditure Program, and I'm thinking that's why we've got this gentleman in the chamber today. Hello. Right, I'll leave it with you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take my report as read and answer any questions.
Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, 3.7, the report tells us that during construction, delays with steelwork have recently been experienced. Can you tell us a bit about these delays, please?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think simply the steelwork hasn't arrived at the time that was originally proposed in the program. There's still plenty of scope in the program to complete the work. That's not the concern. It just means that the spend profile in relation to the end of the financial year is different. So we've had to move money to match the spend profile for the construction project.
Must have been a very well written report. Mine is not that long, but thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Courtney.
I'm finding all the reports well written, quite frankly. Yes, I am. Through you to the officer, so that means we'll be saving money on interest. We won't be using the saying interest.
Through the chair, yes, I guess so.
Right. Would someone like to move? We'll do the recommendation that we receive the report first, and then I'll do the recommendation to council second. So, who would like to move that we receive the report? Thank you, Councillor Rutledge. Seconded by Councillor Laurie. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. And then moving on to the recommendation for council that we approve that these budgets be moved forward to match with the work programme. A mover for that, Councillor Rutledge, seconded by Councillor McGurk. Thank you. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Now moving on to the youth strategy, pages 55 to 79. We've had a lot of work on this one, haven't we? we got 2 people presenting? Excellent, thank you.
Yes, through the chair. I'm sorry, Ms. Thorpe is actually on her way, but until she gets here, we will hold the fort. So there were no amendments to the report, and she was prepared to take it as read. We have had a number of interactions with council on this through workshops and outside workshops. The objectives and the vision statement has been sent around. We've had some feedback. You now have the draft that we think is now ready to go out to the community. So the plan is to do the consultation and then bring it back for adoption. So we're just looking for approval to take that out to the community, and any comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that I thought the way that it was put together and the graphics and things, I thought it looks really good, and we've had quite a bit of input. There hasn't been any more. I've had Councillor Rutledge again working with the staff to fine-tune a couple of things, and no one else came forward. I gave plenty of opportunity, so I'm presuming that everything is A-OK today. Any questions? Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Thanks, Madam Chair. Maybe, I'm not sure the officers are able to answer this, but I noticed in the background documents you talked about the higher proportion of young people in employment. And I was just wondering a bit of commentary about the type of work that they're involved in. The reason I asked the question is there's a difference between full-time work, but type of skill levels that are required or qualifications that are involved, if it's full-time, and the security of that work in terms of is it casual part-time or is it permanent full-time? There's a big difference. So,
Ms. Thorpe's just arrived, so I don't think it would be fair if you wouldn't mind just, Councillor McGurk, just repeating your question for her.
Just a question in 2 areas. The first one is in terms of, you noted in the report, and the strategy talks about that young people in Nelson have a higher proportion are in employment. And it would have been helpful if we sort of had some analysis on that in terms of the type of work, so the skill level that's required, whether it was full-time or part-time, casual, and the security of that work, so is it short-term contract. So there's a big difference between a young person being in low-skilled, part-time, casual work than a young person in learning a skill or a trade or some kind of professional background that's full-time and permanent. So just a bit of feedback would be useful.
Is that on? Through the chair, and firstly apologies for being delayed on my trip downstairs. Yes, I believe it is talking about lower skilled environment jobs of permanent nature, though.
Well, it leads me to think, if we're looking at a youth strategy, let's also focus, let's not forget about focusing on attracting young people or retaining young people in the community. I accept that the risks around young people trapped in unemployment or low-skilled work, but also if we're having a strategy about making it a vibrant sort of a community that young people want to return to or stay in as well. So it's just a comment. And the other one, if your indulgence, Madam Chair, is in terms of the consultation. I appreciate you've gone out widely, but if we're talking about our youth strategy, methods of engaging with young people in a newer, more innovative way, and the sorts of things I'm thinking about is work we did in the Police Act Review, is sort of a Wikipedia type, where you put out a proposal and people have got the opportunity to comment, add, in an evolving process as a way of engaging. So I'm just wondering if that's an option that you might want to think about.
Through the chair, I believe the Community Partnerships team is looking at having a broader, more methods by which they engage with young people and get them to participate.
Thank you. We've got 2 young people here, and I know that you've had a look at it in the Youth Council. Do either of you want to make a comment about how this, how it looks prior to going out? Thank you, Emma.
Through the chair, I do have a question. Part of Goal 4 is understand how democracy works, and how will us as youth know and be assured that the strategy is being implemented and followed through?
So, through the chair, there are two questions there. First question is are you seeking clarification on how we might go about how democracy, engaging young people or educating them about democracy? Was that your question? Sorry, Emma.
Sorry, through the chair. So how will we as youth be able to understand and know how this is being used? How will we know what is being done about it? So spreading the word, kind of?
Through the chair, so from what I understand you're asking, Emma, and please clarify if I've got this wrong, you're asking how will the public, people like yourselves, know that the youth strategy is actually being implemented and see evidence of that. I would imagine that you'll see that through our activity management plans and activities that fall out of the strategy over time.
Alex, did you want a word? Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, can I say that this is really well laid out and I was quite happy with how it is. I just got one question and it's in the draft on page 71. It says under the 6 principles, it says youth development is shaped by the big picture. I was just wondering what the big picture was.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Yes, so this is reflecting on the Ministry of Youth Development, which is really still considered a founding set of principles that they developed a number of years ago. We still see them in a lot of literature in New Zealand and reference to those. And really what they're talking about is development with young people doesn't happen in a silo, and it's integrated with a whole lot of other things like, so it's situated, young people are situated within families, so within a family context, within a community context. It's the interest of community organisations, of schools, of central government, of local government. So the whole bigger picture of youth development is that although young people are single individuals, they are entities within a whole number of wider systems that influence and assist with development.
Did that help, Alex? Good. Anybody else have any questions? Oh, Councillor Laurie and then...
Thank you, Madam Chair. I found the key facts page particularly thought-provoking, and it's interesting to look at the list and go, well, that's good and that's not so good. Couple of questions through the Chair. One, we've got a ticky here and it says that 52% of the Māori population are under 24 years of age in the top of the south. Do we have any idea what that figure is for Pākehā?
Through the chair, sorry I can't give you that today, but yep, you will be able to find those figures in the Nelson Marlborough report, and I could make it available to you if that was helpful.
Okay, so I guess my next question relating to that part is, what is the significance of that figure? It's in there for a reason. What's its significance? Why is it important that we understand that 52% of the Māori population is under 24?
So through the chair, what it is trying to capture is that we've got a younger population of Māori across the top of the south. Just to clarify, to go back, Councillor, I meant the Nelson Marlborough District Health Board survey.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool, thanks. And so does that mean, because I'm not, demographics isn't my strength, does that mean that we will have a higher Māori population overall as this age group gets older? Is that what that means?
Through the chair, I would agree with you that that is what it's suggesting.
Yeah, cool, thanks. And my next question relating to the key facts is, we have a little icon of what appears to be a judge's hammer, and it tells us that Nelson has a higher average of 20 to 24-year-olds per capita who are considered at risk of poor outcomes. Does that mean, because of the judge's hammer, that more young people in Nelson get in trouble with the law?
Through the chair, that was a statistic from this report by the Treasury done in 2015, and there's some reference to that in the body of the report, I believe, or if not, in one of the attachments.
Oh, yeah.
And they measured that study measured outcomes across 4 areas, which are written somewhere. From memory, they were justice, education, employment, and health.
And sorry, Madam through the chair, just in simple terms, through the chair, what are the contributing factors to those poor outcomes? Is that the big picture as well?
Through the chair, Councillor, can I come back to you? I know it's in my report. I just want to find that
sure,
piece.
Thanks. No worries at all. Thank you.
We've got Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to the officers. So we're moving forward with this, aren't we? We had a policy way back in 2005, a youth policy. Now we've got a strategy. So this is a game plan we're implementing. As part of that game plan, I know I might be jumping ahead a bit, do you foresee yourselves working in unison with the community centres that we're developing? For example, the Stoke one and the Te Hunanui one and the Victory one, trying to draw youth into those and
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Courtney. Yes, absolutely. We would like to engage this strategy, and the actions from that will be working right across the community.
Yes, thank you for that. That's reassuring, because in your report here somewhere you say that you want venues for the youth to meet, and whether it's in the CBD and that type of thing, and I thought, well, the starting point could well be with other agencies. I heard that mentioned when you're developing the Stoke one, that it would be ideal to bring the youth in as well if that was possible. You're optimistic about that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Councillor Rutledge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the section about how we're going to seek feedback, I note that we're not specifically mentioning that we're going into schools and looking at that. Are they caught in that gathering feedback from those who have been involved in the process so far, or it just seems like an obvious group that we could go and have a chat to? And then in other things, display boards and libraries, website presence. I'm guessing you're referring to Nelson City Council's website, which I'm maybe thinking might not have a lot of traffic from Nelson Youth, and our social media, which again possibly isn't top of the hit list. I'm encouraged to hear the response back that that you're going to look at other opportunities. Is there a way of even maybe engaging with the Youth Council, getting some of their input into how we might be able to ensure that this feedback is heard from those who it directly affects now?
Through the chair, yes, just to confirm that we will be directly liaising with schools and the Youth Council, as well as those people that have already given us feedback, which includes a wide range of people.
And second question, I see in the Youth Council minutes there was some fantastically blunt feedback about the first draft. Have they seen this current draft and given feedback on it?
Through the chair, not as far as I know.
And lastly, I just want to say it's a comment more than anything, is that I think the way the vision has framed up and how it relates back to jobs and those things that have come through in the report as being very important to positive outcomes is really clear. It's sharpened up, and yeah, I'm really supportive of it. So well done.
Thank you, Councillor Rutledge. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm interested in the youth employment research and data that you've got, and in particular the fact that work history and evidence of being able to work is an important thing. My question relates to, did you see any correlation between the very good performance comparative in the graph on page 64 of Nelson to those other places? Because I note that in terms of regional economic performance, Nelson for the March quarter was ranked number 1 in the country on the main report. Bay of Plenty was 8th of the regions, Hawke's Bay was 10th, and Otago was 12th. So the fact that our economic performance is is the first top in the country. Do you see a correlation between that and the increasing opportunity for youth, young people, to actually get work experience, not necessarily at the highest wage, but to get work experience so that employers will take them on? Did you look at that?
Through the chair, not directly looked at that, but certainly a reflection was made through that research process that you're right, there are opportunities for young people to get work experience, and this helps with a number of factors, one of which is work readiness, helps with the transition for young people to understand what work demands of them, what it expects of them. But the research also identified that any gains in this area to have more opportunities for young people to get into work experience would be beneficial, and there's more work that could be done in that space.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question. Do you think that requirements to meet certain wage levels by different named methods, such as minimum wage or living wage, could have a detrimental effect on young people getting work experience, because employers can't take the risk of people who are not experienced? And
through the chair, I wouldn't be able to comment on that.
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, through the chair. Look, I think this is a really great strategy and it's a fantastic start, and I'm very pleased with you've incorporated the feedback we gave during the last round into it. I particularly like page 76, where you've identified the issues that are facing youth, and I can see that you've worked really hard to incorporate that in. My only concern at the moment is in terms of how it relates to our Vision 2060, and I can't see any reference to Vision 2060 in here. And my concern is that we've sort of separated youth out from that piece of work. So, for example, youth need to be connected to their environment and their natural spaces as well, and whether we've accidentally missed that part out and just thinking about youth needs.
Can I help a moment? I mean, in your report you actually have referred to the 2060, so on page 60 there are 3 points there.
Yeah, but actually within the strategy itself, so maybe you can point out within the strategy where you've...
So, thank you for your comment, Councillor. Under Goal 3, you'll note that we have made some statements around Nelson's young people value our natural environment, and we encourage young people to be involved with and use our local natural environment. And further to that, Nelson 2060 talks about leadership, and there are some themes of leadership throughout under in the goal sections as well, that we're really supporting leaders through mechanisms like the Youth Council and other activity.
Thank you. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to our officers, I'm interested to know what we do as a council towards giving youth work experience, and whether we should be considering doing more, and whether we should be looking at a report for that. But have you any knowledge on that, what we do in this area?
Through the chair, so council offers numerous opportunities for young people. We do have from time to time interns. We had one recently working in the policy team, so they might come from a university and be doing a particular piece of work for us. We also have, I think it's potentially up to 5 now, cadetships with NMIT, where they're studying a level 3 or 4 business course, and they are placed in teams across council. I've got 2 in my team and they're fantastic. They're learning a lot as they go, and it's a great opportunity for them, and a great connection with NMIT.
Thank you. Right. Did you want... Madam Mayor?
And I was just wondering if we had the answer to Councillor Laurie's question, if Gabrielle's managed to find that, because I'm a wee bit puzzled myself on that one.
You found it.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I was just coming to that. So you were interested in the 4 measures from that Treasury report. So they were not achieving NCA Level 2 qualification by the age of 23, at least a Level 4 qualification by the age of, or not achieving a Level 4 qualification. Second measure was use of mental health or addiction services between ages 20 to 22 inclusive. Third measure was receiving a custodial or community sentence between the ages of 25 and 34. So these were predicted projections. And the fourth one was being on a benefit for 5 years or more, and that between age 25 and 34 inclusive. On page 10 of the report, you'll see that there's a link to the full report. It's a long report, it's a comprehensive report, and all the information is set out in that report. It's page 64. Oh, sorry, page 64 of your agenda. Sorry, I'm working off my report.
Thank you. Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gabrielle, I found that really interesting in terms of the data, because if you were to look through just what you've read out, and I look at those other stats that are on that page, in terms of achievement with the NCEA, above the New Zealand average, lower rate of alcohol, drinking dangerously than the rest of New Zealand, employment stats are good. I am surprised to see that you would then have a Nelson specific that says that the outcomes were at risk of poor, at a higher average rate of poor outcomes. I'm just surprised at that, given just especially what you've just read out. So I'm kind of going, is it the custodial sentence thing? I've got a similar question to Councillor Laurie. Is that what's tipping it? Do we understand that?
Yes, through the Chair, in terms of NCA Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, we know that in Nelson we've got a higher than average pass rate for that. One might make an assumption that the people that are achieving Level 3 are possibly in that migration out of the district, which leaves a subgroup of 20 to 24-year-olds. So this is talking about the Treasury report in terms of the statistic is talking about that age group from 20 to 24. It would indicate that the people that are remaining in Nelson within that age group are people that didn't achieve those NCA levels. And I agree with you that I suspect that because we know that we've got good employment, so I suspect that the issue that it is relating to is around that custodial sentencing. Okay. This is not clear in the Treasury report because they don't break it down.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, I actually think that could be a distortion. I just think that particular statistic could be quite a distortion because of the demographic profile that we've got, and then you're going to end up with a weighting on that. So I'm just not sure that if you were to, I'm not sure whether I could consider that to be a valid comparator against the rest of New Zealand, because you've got some other factors in there that are creating demographic changes. So particularly when you talked about level 4, so our many of our young people who are achieving at level 4 are they might come back here in the summertime, but for the rest of the year they're off attending somebody else's university. So I don't necessarily think that. I guess if I was looking at a stat that I'd go, does a document hold together for me and have absolute integrity? It does, absolutely every piece of it, until I get to that particular stat, and then I go, and when I look at documents like that and I go, sometimes it can be the smallest thing that can then undermine the confidence level of the whole document. And I'm just wondering how relevant, whether that particular stat is
or that piece of information is therefore driving some other things within the report, and maybe it should be. So I'm wondering why we've used that one. Are we using that one because we have an intention of particularly focusing on that group? And that might well be the right thing to do.
Can I just clarify which icon you're looking at? The justice one.
Yeah.
I mean, I
And
do
it's a
wonder.
mix.
Thank you. I mean, for generations, the young people have generally gone to university from Nelson, and those that stay are a smaller group, and they often are employed by a lower paid industry, which we have. We have the primary industries provide jobs for the age group that don't go. And I've observed it. That's just a personal observation and that's I'm wondering whether that's what's creating this statistic, if you like, because a lot of our young people do go away and they get the university degrees out of town. And now that NMIT has increased, I know, dramatically in the last 20 years, but I'm just wondering whether that's where we're getting a bit skewy. Councillor Laurie.
I don't know, through the chair, with respect, if it's skewy. I think this is a really interesting part of the report, and I think it's a little window into what's going on in Nelson for a lot of people. And I mean, I'd like to know more about that part, and I'm also curious as to how much of a role drugs play in these figures, in this part of the report. And do we have any way of finding out whether or not drugs are involved in a lot of these sentences?
Through the chair, I'm guessing that we could do some more work in that space. Drug and alcohol use or misuse was a key theme in the feedback that we got from a number of stakeholder groups, including young people. You know, I can't comment, I can't provide you much more substance at this time.
And just on picking up on the comment before about this distorting the report, I would have thought that the same measures are used all over the country, aren't they? So rather than perhaps distorting, it's actually revealing.
Yes, the report, through the chair, sorry, the report talks about a number of districts across all the districts across New Zealand. Interestingly, within that younger age group, we fared very well, positively. So there was a difference between the 15 to 19-year-old age group and the 20 to 24-year-old age group. You know, there are some options in terms of that fact, in terms of keeping it in. We could keep it in, we could remove it, we could footnote it, we could add an explanation.
Well, I'd be in favour of keeping it in, very much. I think it's important.
I'm just thinking. We've got Mike Rutledge next. Sorry, Councillor Rutledge.
So if I'm reading this right, just picking up on this again, would it be reasonably fair to say that of your 15 to 19-year-olds, the top 50 or 60% who are achieving well and showing these strong outcomes then leave, and you're left with the lower half, let's say, who are staying in Nelson age 20 to 24, who have the poorer outcomes already between age 15 and 19, and that's what you're left with, and so therefore the outcomes of that group are going to be lower. Is that basically how these numbers are shaking out?
So I think we need to be, through the chair, I think we need to be careful. This is some statistics that come from central government work to look at the outcomes across the country. And I think what they're trying to do is to understand if they can use early predictors of outcomes, and they generally relate to interactions with government agencies through benefits, through health, and try and improve those services at a younger age, so that the determinants that are better outcomes at an older age. I think our approach in the strategy is to work with our community to deliver better outcomes for the community, and to engage with those government agencies and community groups who are working with young people on those issues such as drugs and alcohol, such as employment issues, in order to deliver those better outcomes.
I guess where I was getting to with that, Chris, is if that is the case, then my comment would be the focus perhaps shouldn't be on the 20 to 24-year-olds who have got problems, but maybe the 15 to 19-year-olds that are feeding that group. And so actually getting that intervention in earlier, as opposed to going, oh, we're doing awesome in 15 to 19, and then we've got this random problem out. So do we actually need to go back to the source a little bit further? Is the way I kind of read these numbers. I don't know.
So, Ms. McDonald, I'll get you to respond to that. I need us to focus back on what we're dealing with today as well, because we're getting all around different things at the moment, and I think it's important that actually this strategy does get out there so we can find out what everybody else is thinking, not what the small group around the table are thinking. And Ms. Thorpe's been out and worked in the community and a huge array of people and come up with this document that we've now chewed over many times, and I'm actually quite keen to get it out there and actually refine it, and it does need to be refined because we're not going to be able to do everything, but when we get the feedback we will know what the community most thinks is at need at the moment. Thanks, Ms. McDonald.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, if I could just suggest what we might do with the text just before it goes out is provide a little bit of explanation of that demographic factor that can be driving this, so that others reading the document don't come up with the same sort of question mark. They can see what's leading to this. And when we bring back the final for adoption and the action plan, we can bring you a bit more insight into this issue, and that can help the council decide where they want to focus their interventions over the next year.
Thank you. Councillor McGurk, did you still want to ask a question, or have we refined enough?
I think it's refined. I'm anxious to get this out.
Okay. Would you like to move it?
Well, I'm happy to move.
Thank you. Thank you.
But just a comment, probably, I'm entirely in support, and I think congratulate the officers on a well prepared document, and certainly the level of debate around here is certainly is probing, and it does galvanise us into action. And I'll just wait, interested to wait for the feedback. I'll have some views, and I'm sure the others around the table also have some views, but probably leave that for another time. But I was just wondering, is there an opportunity for members of the public to actually feedback directly in terms of a presentation to council?
Yes, through the chair, we expect that people will be able to come to public forum and speak to the committee directly, if they so choose. Yeah,
because I think people speaking in public is a way of telling their story and providing a bit of colour, a bit of background to those numbers. And I pick up on what Councillor Laurie said about those negative outcomes, where young people have a sort of a less control over the direction and the lack of opportunities. There's a loss of hope, and they are negative outcomes. And if that's those who can do and those who can't sort of stay behind, those sorts of outcomes are pretty obvious. That's what it sort of indicates to me. Anyway, happy to move. And
thank you, Councillor. The Mayor would like to speak, and then we're moving into. We've got one more question from Councillor Barker. I think we've chewed this over enough. Have you got a question or a debate?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one thing I'd just come back to, perhaps the big picture. Having looked up the Ministry's work, they've got a really nice little definition there, because I actually think that was a very good question. And I know it's always difficult putting footnotes and things, but it might be worth just defining what the big picture, which they just describe as so simply. The big picture means the values and belief systems, the social, cultural, economic context and trends, the Treaty of Waitangi, international obligations such as the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. It's just, I actually thought, because you do look at that and go, oh, well, what is this big picture thing? And now we kind of, it's resolved a very good question.
Perhaps that could go in the document also. I think that would be helpful.
And I've had a look at the Treasury report while I've been sitting here, and I'd have to say that it's just made me have even more questions about that stat as I look at New Plymouth and Napier that are either side of us in the alphabetical list, and they look almost identical. So I'll leave the officers to look at that.
Thank you.
Just on that, on this issue of those like poor outcomes, would it be possible whenever we get to talk about this again to hear from someone who's an expert in that field? Do we have that expertise in the community? I mean, I'd just be interested in learning more about this.
Councillor Laurie, I would suggest you go up to the 4th floor and you talk to our community partnerships people, because they'll tell you who to talk to and exactly refine what you're looking for. They're so in touch with the community, it's not funny.
Okay, I think it would be valuable for the committee to hear from someone or some people about this particular issue that we've identified.
Again, if you would like to go and talk to them, and then if you come up with something with the staff that you think that would be of value to our community, our committee, then really happy to hear about
Cool.
that.
Thanks.
Councillor Barker.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the 4th floor might be helpful for me in this question that I have here. It relates. Page 67, the problems. That last paragraph on page 67 are our problems, as I see it. And I think our strategy is great, and a lot of tremendous work has gone into it. So if I look now at goals 1 and 2, they're called our goals. So this our is Nelson City and the community. Who is the our? Who's the...
Sorry, can you repeat that, Councillor?
The page 77, we have the heading our goals. So who is the our?
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. Yes, that's referring to Nelson City Council's goals.
Right. So I want to ask, what specifically in those, how are we going to do this section of those goals, are we actually going to be able to do something practical, physical and evident to look at those significant barriers that I referred to on page 67? It's all very nice to say we're going to enable young people to know how to get help, encourage others in the community, facilitate pathways. What are we physically actually planning to do to achieve these goals?
Through the Chair, this strategy will be accompanied by an action plan which will be largely led by the Community Partnerships team, which will come up to you and set that out clearly.
Thank you.
Thank you. When we get this out the door, we'll be able to move on with some more stuff, because I feel like we're getting it stuck at the moment. So, Councillor Fulton, and then I'm going to go to debate.
Oh, I thought we were in debate. So I'll just look, I think this is a great piece of work, and well done to the officers who've taken the time to take on board all of the feedback. I think the key facts paint quite an interesting picture, and I think facts can be interpreted in multiple ways, and it's always hard to get statistics and quite interpret them accurately, but in a way it doesn't really matter where Nelson is placed in comparison to the rest of the country. What we do know about Nelson is that a lot of our talented young people leave, and so to me the statistics here make sense, that we end up with people who are more vulnerable between the ages of 20 to 24, and that means it's really important that we, as a council, we work to ensure that they are as cared for as we possibly can. So I think that the key facts paint a fairly accurate picture. I grew up in Nelson. I think that most young people have been leaving for decades, and I certainly see that happening with my teenagers. I've got an 18-year-old and a 19-year-old who will leave, and then hopefully they'll come back, but that is the general trend. And certainly when my son was coming back to Nelson last year, he noticed how many people had gone and how much harder it was to connect with young people once you have finished school. So I think that is a big issue for young people who choose to stay. How do they feel connected to their community and connected to other young people? So I think it gives a fairly, in my mind, a fairly good portrayal of how hard it is for people aged 20 to 24 in Nelson to connect, and that's important for whatever reason that we address that. I would like to have seen the Vision 2060 reflected in this a little bit more, and I don't know if maybe with the next draft the staff can look at that. I think that the Vision 2060 in terms of the overarching goals and aims is a great starting place, and it's really important to remember that youth are a part of our community, and so that big picture, or that then we're not working with youth in isolation, that we're working with youth as part of that community. So I would like to have seen the Vision 2060 incorporated into this a little bit more. But apart from that, I think it's a great start.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other people wanting to debate? Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to support this. Probably, and I endorse what Councillor Fulton has said in terms of young people leaving and you're left with a vulnerable population. I suppose one of the focuses I would like to see in terms of the second outcome in terms of youth development is a bit more exploration around trade training, developing some technical skills, and using applied sciences. I don't think all our young people need to race off to universities and tertiary institutions to get a degree, but there are other skills and knowledge out there that can be equally applicable. And that can be done, I suppose, there's opportunities here, and it does tend to think about some of the language in the document does tend to sort of reveal a more traditional view of the work as in the past and I think the nature of work and employment in the future is probably going to be a little bit different from what certainly my experience has been and a lot of other parents around the city. So I'll just leave that as a point. And I think the second thing is about active citizenship, one of the other goals there. And I think this does give us an opportunity to explore new ways of engaging with young people who tend not to focus on organisations and institutions. They tend to be more related to causes and issues. So if we can make this an issue, make this a cause, and look at new ways of exploring engagement with young people and get their voice included. So there's an opportunity here, and I think we should embrace it.
Thank you. I'm going to speak briefly to this. I know I would like to acknowledge the staff and the work that's gone into this because it has been quite a long process. It's the first one of its kind, so it's also hard to start something new. It will come out of the social wellbeing policy, so it is the youth strategy is a standalone policy, which we haven't had before, so of course it is going to have some growing pains. Regarding the 20 to 24, I think it's interesting that we all seem to be zoning in on that, and our young people do go away, and they do very well. I think that the nurturing that they get from Nelson and growing up and the environment that we have, which is why people come back when they have their little ones, they go away quite well established, and they actually make a mark on the world that they end up in. And it's interesting because this Friday at the Suta there's going to be, I think, 5 young people that are doing extremely well in the world who have grown up here. And I'm lucky enough to be able to attending that, and I think the Mayor is going to attend with me. So, it is a success when our children go away because they do really well, and then they come back and they share, and they often come back in their 30s to have their children. So while we might look at that little group that are left here that actually do, I think it is important that the ones that are here find their growth and actually get opportunities to grow and be the best that they can be in this environment, because we actually need young people here. And maybe there are some things missing that we can help them with, but we'll find that out when we put the strategy out, whether there are things that will help them develop while they are here. They may choose to stay here for whatever reason, all sorts of reasons why you don't go away, but it shouldn't mean they're any worse off. They should actually have all the opportunities to be the very best that they can be and to find their place in the world and to be magnificent like they all are. So I'd like to now, thank you, I think we've had 3 or 4 speaking. Are we going to speak against, Councillor? Otherwise I'm going to put it. No, I'm going to put it now. I have said I will put it, so I'll put it. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. No, you may not. We've had a lot. I have got your name down here many times, Councillor Laurie. We're moving on to item 11, which is the Youth Council update. So we've got youth councillors here, Alex and Emma. Who's first? Emma, thank you.
Okay, so at the moment Youth Council has been doing quite a lot. It's kind of the busy period of the year. And we have just started getting involved with a needed revamp of the Trafalgar Skate Park. So there's a need and a want for it to be painted so that it represents Nelson. And also, I guess, looks really nice beside the Trafalgar Centre, because at the moment it's taking away. So we don't know exactly what we want to do. We could work closely with council staff or could even become a project of our own. And some ideas we already have are competitions, so getting schools and community groups to come up with a design, and then we'd paint that on, or even community painting days, so like every Saturday or something. But we are just having a meeting for that next week to sort out what we want to do. And recently we gave an award at RockQuest, and this was to the Deadbeat Express, and it was for crowd engagement. So the point of this was to help a band advance with what they love doing. And it was also, we tried to promote ourselves by going backstage, talking on stage, so that youth understand who we are and what we do. Also, I believe that at the previous community services meeting, the youth council's views or conflicts of interest were brought up. So we are completely apolitical, and we want to be clear about that. So we're starting a register of conflicts of interest to be very clear about it. And lastly, it's currently Youth Week, and we launched a Facebook mini-series. So we asked youth, what would you like the counselors to know? And our Facebook page is the Nelson Youth Council, and I highly recommend that you check it out because these are real people with voices that want to be heard. And we try to create a platform for them where their views can spread to other youth, and maybe you guys, if you check it out. And so there's quotes and their pictures. And it also brought up the idea of civics. So, when we're talking to youth, so that we could get their views heard. It's also bringing up, counselors. These are the people that help run the city, because many kind of don't take part in that. And it was also for us to connect with youth. Yeah. Now I'll pass on to Alex.
Thank you, Emma. So I'll carry on from that. So we've recently nominated a few volunteer organisations around Nelson for the Trust Power Community Awards, and we have sent in our own application. From this, we have received an invitation for 2 youth councillors to attend these awards on 26th of June. We're very excited for this as we think it's an awesome opportunity to acknowledge all of the volunteer organisations that are doing well around Nelson. Our environmental subgroup, which has probably been brought up in a previous meeting as it was started at the start of the year, has taken a turn in project direction due to a lack of engagement around our last topic, which was targeting car wash fundraisers and the impact on stream health, although we still acknowledge this is a very important topic and would like to support stream health projects in other ways. We are now looking at targeting the Nelson community's transportation methods through fund refurbishing bikes for the public to use, but we are still yet to clarify the details on this. Hopefully there'll be a meeting in the coming weeks. We're currently supporting a Youth Speak Summit alongside the Tasman and Murchison Youth Council and Sport Tasman. So this event targets year 9s and 10s to get them more involved with sports by running workshops and having youth get involved in creating their own sporting activities. This also helps young people get active but in a fun, engaging way regardless of sporting abilities. So 2 youth councillors have been at the front of this, and it's actually happening today. So that's really good. We have sent away a submission to the draft City Amenities Bylaw Clause 11 regarding the permit to protest. The submission organising got underway relatively fast due to the short amount of time we had, although there was many different opinions on this. We were very happy with the submission as it respected everybody's views. And finally, we are in the process of writing our submission to the suicide prevention strategy. We are very involved with this as we see it's a big issue. There is a big issue of mental health, and suicide is very relevant and concerning within the youth community. We feel this is important that we approach this the best way possible and are therefore putting much care into it. The submission is due on the 26th of June as the date has been extended, so it's really good.
Alex, thank you. Awesome. And I sat in on one of your meetings for that submission. Yeah, I look forward to reading that. Who did you come up with for the Trust Power? Who did you nominate?
So we nominated Victory Boxing and the Refugee Centre and so I was trying to think of the last one. Yeah, it was the Victory Community Centre. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Awesome.
it's been a while.
Yes, it has been a while. Thank you, thank you. Any questions of the youth councillors from the council? No? Very, very good report, and you girls are magnificent today, so there you go. Well done. We'll move on then to the Youth Council minutes on pages 80 to 84. I'm just wondering if there's any questions on that, and then we'll... Somebody like to move that we receive those? Councillor Laurie, thank you, and Councillor McGurk. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Again, it's carried. And moving on to pages 85 to 90 of the 12th of April. Any questions on that one? I think the girls have actually covered everything off brilliantly. So I'll ask for a mover of that. Councillor Courtney, Councillor McGurk, thank you. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Again, it's carried. Now I'm just going to check that I've done everything I need to in this part of the meeting. What I'm going to do is a very important part of the day is morning tea, so we're going to have an adjournment so that you can have morning tea in the public section. And you need to read the report, which will be handed around. Thank you. So we'll reconvene about 1:45. into public excluded, so I need somebody to move that we do that. Thank you, Councillor McGurk, seconded by Councillor Rutledge. I'll put that. All those in favour, aye. Against, carried. Thank you, girls. 10 out of 10. That doesn't happen very often from me, so I think you did an excellent job today. Really appreciate what you had to say too. You should all have got your papers so you can quietly read away.